24/7 Laredo Talk Show is an independent and original news channel dedicated to local topics relating to everyday issues that affect Laredo, Webb County, and surrounding areas. Any comments made by guests are not a reflection of the views and opinions of the 24/7 Laredo team. However, we intend to offer a community program with wide-ranging views and opinions that reflect our community's people. No abusive or obscene comments toward any class of people or persons will be tolerated. We believe that an informed community is the way to move Laredo and Webb County forward. 24/7 Laredo Talk Show is open to any candidate running for office or any person who strongly believes in any issue that helps our community stay informed. If you would like to advertise on the show, you can email us at bordertown2020@gmail.com.
Good morning, Laredo. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the 24/7 Laredo Talk Show. Hi, I'm your host, Jesus Garza. This is an original, free, and independent news channel. Talk about issues affecting Laredo. Today, we're very fortunate to have Ms. Mellie Hereford, who's actually a brand new candidate, but is very much involved in the process. She knows a lot of how it all happens. I'm really looking forward to talking to her. She's running for City Council District number 4. Thanks for joining us, Mellie. How are you doing?
Thank you for inviting me. I'm doing great. All excited about everything that's going on. You know, the very positive, overwhelming response to my entering the race.
Good, good. Well, let me ask you before we begin, what district are we talking about? It's District 4, but could you tell me more or less the area that we're talking about?
Okay, more or less, the southern boundary is the north side of Gustavos. The east boundary is the west side of the Loop. The north boundary is the south side of Saunders, and the west boundary is Marsella Avenue.
Okay, so pretty much the whole Heights area all the way to the Loop, more or less, even a little bit more even.
But you know, they call it the Las Lomas because the Heights is like from Gustavos through Corpus Christi.
Right, so we go all the way close to where Buenos Aires or the old Buenos Aires Elementary School is at, definitely.
Yes.
Let me ask you, Mellie, not everyone may know you in the district. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, well, I was born here in Laredo, Texas. I attended Our Lady of Guadalupe School, an elementary school, from K through 8th grade. So 9 grades I was with the Sisters of the Ursulines. Then I transferred to Nixon High School where I graduated, transferred to Laredo Community College, then transferred to Sol Ross State University in Alpine, Texas, where I got my degrees in biology and chemistry and a teaching certificate. Then I came to Laredo and taught 6 years with LISD and San Agustin High School. I also received my master's from Laredo State University, which became TAMIU, and that master's was in psychology and education with a certification in guidance and counseling. So
you're pretty well-rounded in terms of education. You certainly have a lot of good, heavy educational background to teach or even to provide counseling, I would imagine, right?
Yes, sir. In fact, that's what I did for 20 years as a volunteer with the Boy Scouts, because I had 3 sons that wanted to go through the program from the 1st grade through high school. And so to reach the rank of Eagle, you have to go through the process. And so with 3 sons, it took 20 years. And so I worked with all the boys. I was the merit batch counselor. And so teaching them, you know, all the requirements, you know, goal setting and
let me tell you, it's one of those few organizations that I was a Boy Scout many years ago, but I never tried to become an Eagle Scout. But it's something that only very few young men get to do. And we should all be very proud of them because it's not easy to get. And it shows the type of character and the type of patrons that we actually want in our country.
It's character building. And, you know, it takes a long time and a lot of perseverance because a lot of the boys give up. But, you know, in working with those boys, now they are men that have become doctors, lawyers, teachers. I have a psychologist and a policeman. So they all turned out wonderfully well.
But I never imagined, though, because I've known that you were involved in some of these activities, but how did you make the transition from being a public servant in the nonprofit world or in the, I guess, in the community in general, and how did you decide to decide to run for office? This is actually your first office, is it not?
Well, it was just, actually when the boys left home, it was like I've lived in the district 40 years, okay? The first 20 years I dedicated to raising the boys, and then the next 20 years I was like, well, why does nothing improve in my neighborhood? It still looks the same as when I moved here. So what is going on? So then I started going, well, before that, I dealt with a group from Green Ranch. They had an issue over there with them building.
5 years ago, 6 years ago, with a developer.
Yes. And then they had an issue at San Ignacio also with the oil field where they wanted to put a remediation, a mud pit behind the homes of the people. So I thought, well, I have a science background. I can go help them. And I provided them a lot of information. So I did that. So then I went to City Hall, and you know what, you're not going to believe this, why I went to City Hall. But this man who was blind got a ticket because his wife parked in a parking lot, in the parking space for handicap, and forgot the placard. Well, they put this man in municipal court in a room by himself. He's legally blind, okay? And so they told him, you have to pay a $500 fine, and so here's the paper, sign a promissory note. And that just infuriated me, the injustice of doing that to this poor man. And so I went to City Hall. I called my councilman. I called the city management. It took them 7 months to get that straightened out. But somebody did pay the $500 for him. And I do not like injustice, oppression, or favoritism. Those are the enemies in my vocabulary.
Incredible. So you got to decide to run now after talking to people in a community?
Well, they always, for 5 years, I've been going to City Hall, okay,
Right.
on different issues. That's where I met the group from our Laredo. I'm not a founding member of our Laredo.
Okay.
But when I got there, it was like they stand up for what I stand for, always doing the right thing for the greater good. So I like those people. So we're very like-minded. And so we joined forces and we address different issues.
Right. Well, what's good about it is the fact that you actually, every community should have an advocacy group or a group that asks for transparency, because occasionally you have public officials, not only Laredo, but everywhere else, they're not transparent or accountable. And if you don't have someone putting a little bit of pressure on them, chances are they're not going to tell us all the details.
That's
True. In my
true.
experience, it's the way it's been now. So you were able to go to all these meetings and you said, I think I'm going to run, or was there something particular that just got you a pet peeve?
Never did I ever say I was ever going to run. All my friends would say, come on, you're a good speaker. Please, you prepare well. You know the issues. I said, no, I'm older. I want a young, energetic person that knows the issues to go into, what needs to be done. But no, I waited till the last minute. And then at 3 o'clock of the last day of the filing, no one had gone. And so when you don't oppose someone, that means that you're happy with their performance. Right. And I was very unhappy with the performance. And I said, well, I have to be at least the other option.
Right. So you went in there, made your application. What was the response?
The response automatically, wow, great, we have hope, things are going to change, you're going to make a difference, you're going to restore trust to the community. I said, look, I'm only one vote if I'm to get in. Yes.
So what are the issues that you think the community in that area is asking you to look into, or what are the issues that you think should be brought into discussion?
Well, after assessing them for 5 years, I know what the issues are. And it is the charter and the code of ethics. It's not strong enough. It doesn't make them accountable. And so there's gray areas everywhere. So whatever they do, they can weasel their way out.
Yes. Well,
and
that's
so it's not good.
Yes. But in particular, in that particular district, were there any issues that could have stand out in terms of the streets, the sidewalks, or anything?
Everything. We need sidewalks. In fact, 4 years ago, I was so impressed with this young man that was going to represent my district. I met with him 2 hours, after he was sworn in, because I'm one of those that, hey, you're going to represent me, and this is what I expect. I gave him a list, and I said, I want, sidewalks where sidewalks are needed. There's no need for people to be walking in the middle of the street. We need lighting. We need cleanliness. We need police presence. And some of the streets need to be repaved. And I wanted covers for the places where you wait for the bus, because a lot of elderly people use. Yes. And then I told him I wanted the Lamar Bruni Vergara pool fully enclosed. That's the only wonderful park we have in my district, and lots of senior citizens use it, and they want to use it year round. So in the winter, when we go swimming, yes, the water is warm, but when you get out, it's freezing cold. So what they do is they have this blowtorch to keep you warm with a blowtorch. And it smells like diesel. It's awful and unhealthy.
Right. Well, then there's obviously issues in your district that need to be dealt with. Now, when you were actually deciding to run, and you decided to run, have you noticed that there's particular groups in the area, or are there political groups out there that you sense that are out there trying to get their particular candidate to win?
Of course. So
especially groups.
You have the groups, and no matter what, they are loyal to this person, rather than, we want someone that's going to perform, what we elect them to do. Right. And it's like that doesn't matter. It's just who we get in there.
Right. Well, I there's another park called the Plum Park down the road at Nixon High School, and I believe the people there have asked that it be fenced up as well, because it attracts certain groups of people at night, and that issue still hasn't been resolved. I would imagine that you're also going to consider looking at those issues as well.
Yes, well, whatever the district asks of me.
Yes.
Yeah. But you know what? I also, they get the $500,000 discretionary fund, and that is so abused. I brought a list of how it is that they spend this money, and it says here, and this is what I made the other councilman accountable. He had spent $250,000 for the Don Tomas Sanchez statue, which is in District 8, and $275,000 for the Avenida de las Americas, also from outside of my district. Also, they gave $200,000 from our district to the Lazy River Pool. And so it's like, well, what's left?
So the money's being used for outside the district, but it's supposed to be intended for the district.
Well, yes.
We're going to talk about it in a second. Let me ask you, this year is the 95th year after the women's suffragists began their movement towards the right to vote and to really get fully involved in the community. How do you see how women have come from 95 years ago to today, and how much more do you think they need to go before there's some type of sense of equality within the sexes?
Well, a lot of people don't want to get involved, men or women. You go to City Hall and it's pretty empty. And so this is why they take advantage. Now, in this race, you see that there's a lot of women running. For the very first time in the history of our city, so many women are running in all the races.
It really is. There's about 55 people running.
Yes, and I think it is because of their level of dissatisfaction with the performance of what's going on at City Hall. They probably think, hey, if that's what they're doing, I know that I can do better. I can make a difference.
Right. Well, there's only one female on City Council.
Yes.
Obviously, it does not really reflect the difference there between men and women in Laredo, where women take at least 50%.
It does not. And you know what? When she ran, one councilman mentioned that we were the inferior agenda.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
In front of Mrs. Vielma's face.
Incredible. Well, we'll find out by November whether or not if it's in fact that correct. We're going to take a short break at this time, and we'll be right back with Mellie Hereford, who's running for City Council District number 4. Thank you. welcome back to the show. We have Mellie Hereford, who's a candidate for City Council District 4 here in Laredo. The election set for November the 3rd. She was a late entry for that particular race. She's running against one councilman, Albert Torres. Now, to be able to explain to the district, when you're talking to district members or the voting members of your district, what will you be able to tell the members, your voters, concerning your difference between you and Albert Torres, if there is any?
Well, let me tell you.
Or the issues that you think you put more, you're going to put more emphasis more on certain issues than Mr. Torres.
You know, what really got me upset about our councilman was that one evening at 10:55, right before they adjourned, they passed a motion to move the elections to separate from the general election. So, you know, that is very upsetting because that is a form of voter suppression. So I called the mayor and I told him that I needed him to veto that action on that motion, on that resolution. And so he brought it back. I brought a group of citizens to come and argue the point that that was voter suppression. You know, as it is, the voter apathy is pretty big. And so what this does is that, you know, when you separate them from when people are so excited about going to vote for a president, less people participate. And therefore, then we can have Cañoneros winning and choosing who the next successors are.
Definitely. In fact, the presidential election is always the one that creates the most excitement, enthusiasm. And that's what we should have the other elections, because you want to make sure that everyone participates and makes their voice known. So certainly, I'm glad to hear that it didn't get passed. Did the mayor veto it then?
Yes, the mayor did veto it, and we came back and argued the point, and he changed it.
Good for him.
But you know, they tried to sneak it in at the very last minute. And then another time, they said, because they didn't like our Laredo group to come and present their public comments on the issues. So one of the councilmen on 3 different agendas put that the citizen comments would be moved to the end of the meetings. So that, I mean, that's at 10:30. And so that was after
that's an old typical tactic by politicians.
Yes.
Find out when they're not available, you move it to that time. At the county courthouse, they used to do it at 11 o'clock in the morning when nobody was there yet. They show up after lunch. So it was always moved back and forth, and it's those techniques are done by politicians all the time. It's unfortunate.
But we have to make them accountable, and we have to assert our rights that this is not the way it's done. We expect them to follow it through.
That's right. Well, let me ask you then specifically about certain issues affecting the district, well, not necessarily the district, but the whole city as a whole. You mentioned sidewalks and maybe more stuff for improvement of the parks. Is that what you, if the people were to come and knock on your door and say, we want more parks, or we want more, more better quality of life situations, do you have to, would you make it difficult on them to get those things out?
It will be difficult, and let me tell you why. We have a $26 million expected shortfall.
Yes, but if I get $500,000, you'd imagine if this councilman had spent $500,000 on his district, the chances are those issues would have been resolved by now.
You would think. You would think.
It would seem to me. What other things did you find on the discretionary funding list that you'd like to talk about?
Well, I found that most of the money supposedly goes into the parks. And so, you know, you're not going to see anything in the neighborhoods unless supposedly you go into the parks. I have not gone into the parks to see what those improvements were.
Right. Well, you know, the point is that the city council should have just funded the parks, period, to begin with. You know, and that way that you shouldn't have to be using $500,000 for that. But,
well, let me tell you, the San Antonio councilmen only get $50,000. So why is this community, which is so poor, get $500,000?
Well, all I can suggest to you, maybe they're using it for other projects, probably not in their district, like in the case you brought up earlier. But it seems to me that it would be a good idea to have a discretionary fund that's about $50,000, $75,000 each, and under the condition that it be used only in your district. You cannot share that money for another city agency, city department, or outside that particular physical jurisdiction, in my view.
I agree with you.
Because sometimes, the organizations or the city district needs a paint job here and there, needs certain things that the city councilman can take care of, but not to the point of $500,000 to be used for other purposes. It's like a little slush fund as far as I'm concerned.
It is a slush fund that helps them stay in office, okay? And they jump from one entity to the other, from the city to the county to the school districts to the college. And so that we don't ever have new people. We need fresh blood.
I just seem to me that, like you mentioned, there are people who work for UISD or LISD or Webb County, and they actually are working as city councilmen, or they're working from different, they're working from one government, but they're representing another government entity. To me, it gives the impression of control and the impression of not allowing for democracy to flourish and allowing other people to make different opinions, because the day that the top dog tells you, I want you to vote a certain way, chances are you're going to vote that way. It just gives me that impression.
Yes. So, that's why there's never any progress or change.
Yeah. Well, that's the impression I get. The other issue, Mellie, is the water bill.
The water quality.
The water bill or the sewer bill, the one that we all paid on a monthly basis, that's starting into a bond system with the city of Laredo. What are your thoughts about being increased on an annual basis for the next 2 to 3 years?
Well, they do. Some of these pipelines are very, very old, and I agree they need to be, updated and changed. We want to drink good quality of water, and so we don't know what these old lines are bringing into our homes. And there's one line around the corner from my home, and every year when it gets cold, it breaks. They have to tear down the street, and here comes the water gushing around my corner.
Well, no, they certainly need to be replaced, but I just wonder whether or not they should have created a tiered program where senior citizens over the age of 65, 70 years old, who may not have the money to continually pay for this increase in water bills, that they should have been excluded, or at least not excluded, but they should have paid a little bit less than a regular household. But that's just my impression of it.
Well, I went to that meeting and I told them, at that time they named us the least affordable city in Texas. And they raised the bridge fares, the bus fares, and the parking meters. They had raised already the water and the sewer. And then we were waiting on the tax rate, because we thought they're going to raise the tax rates too. Well, they tell you the story, we didn't raise your tax rate, but they raise your appraisals. So your taxes are still going up. It's getting very expensive to live here.
It is expensive. Laredo has a very high level of expenses. And fortunately, many people are able to pay it, but to what expense? I mean, when a lot of it, the extra money could have gone to quality of life projects, it doesn't. It goes to actually essential expenses that it's unfortunate. It really is unfortunate. On another matter, recently, there was a group of people who went to the city hall or the city council and requested that they paint a particular sign in front of the federal courthouse. And they said part of it is freedom of speech, which it is, and part of it said we're gonna pay for that particular expense. And they went ahead and I don't think there was an ordinance before, and city council went ahead and approved it. And since then, of course, there's other people who would like to paint certain streets in the city of Laredo, but now it's opened up, seems like a Pandora's box here on that issue. What are your thoughts about that?
I think it was not a well thought out issue because it presents a safety hazard with, the distraction of all those big letters. This was Mr. Bali's argument of the First Amendment right, but he uses the First Amendment as it's convenient for him. What about the residents in his district who say he doesn't live in the district? What if they decided to paint, he doesn't live here outside of his office? Would they agree to that? That's their First Amendment right?
Right.
And I'm sure they're not going to agree with that.
Well, that's the whole point. I mean, there is no system, there is no ordinance. And
Correct.
so if I wanted to put there any other language, then they should allow me to put my whatever language I want to put on my street.
Correct.
And not only that, I would say, you know what, I want to sell elotes on that street. Why don't you just put the name of my business on the street?
That's right.
There's no ordinance, and they're opening the box, Pandora's box, and it just seems to me that they should have thought about it a little bit more.
Yes.
On another issue, Mellie, is the issue of retirement in city councilmen. Could you explain to the public what the city council passed concerning the retirement for city councilmen?
Well, retirement benefits for themselves. And I'm thinking, this is a part-time job. You're not going to work in this, 15, 20 years, if you're lucky, 2 terms. And I believe that you have to work 1,000 hours. I don't think that they qualify. If I was to be on there, I would try to undo that. It's very unfair. But you know what? They pass things like they run you down. This is what we're going to get, and that's it.
Well, the way I see it, Mellie, there's going to be a new council possibly this year. Well, not this year. There'll be probably 1 or 2 new councilmen at least. The next term is going to be another 1 or 2. And the city manager has to be counting heads, because before you know it, he's going to have a brand new council in the near future.
Correct.
And so he needs to really be, well, I'm sure he does the best he can, I would imagine, to try what's in the best interest of the community. But they need to keep an eye on all those little issues, because to me, it just seems it's not logical to be paying for them to be eligible for retirement. You got your own job somewhere else. You
That's
shouldn't
right.
be getting more. You shouldn't put your money getting to somebody else's pockets anymore. Mellie, last question I was going to ask you: where can people go if they want to communicate with you and talk to you about maybe volunteering or, in fact, participating with you?
Thank you very much for asking. Through Facebook, they can message me through Facebook at Mellie Hereford for District 4. That's
Okay.
the Facebook.
So if they have any questions, if they want to volunteer, even donate, if they want to go give you a call, they can call you at that number, or that's how you message.
And we'll return their answer with a reply or with a volunteer, whatever they need.
Okay. And I guess the last question, so what's the plan now, the next couple of weeks in September for you?
It's going to be hectic, 2 weeks of really working hard to catch up. I mean, what else can I do? I mean, this is what was thrust upon me to try to make a difference for my community and always for the greater good.
Yes.
It's not about what's in it for me, which seems to be the main idea of many of the people on the council.
Yes. Well, it makes sense, Mellie. I wish you the very best. The election is on November 3rd, in about 60, 70 days from now. Early voting begins on October 13. Last day to register to vote is probably around September the 12th. Please remember those numbers. And if you want to talk to Mellie Hereford, Councilwoman for District 4, you can reach her on Facebook. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to tell the audience?
Well, my slogan is restoring trust to the community, because the community has lost their faith in city government.
Well, thank you, Mellie. Appreciate those words. We'll be looking forward to talking to you the next 30 days and on the way to the City Hall. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, the public, for watching. Until next time, I'm Jesus Garza, your host. Please continue to have a wonderful day.